Welcome to My Big Safety Challenge, a podcast all about stories of safety leadership, presented by Dale Carnegie and the Board of Certified Safety Professionals.
This is a treat for us to have this gentleman with us today. John Holland has come with a background of many years of experience with UPS and now with another trucking company, and we'll get into that. But I was telling him earlier, Jason, that this is the third season of podcast. This is the first time that we've had somebody who comes from a transportation logistical background. So for all our listeners out there, it'll just be, a different slant. There'll be practical things that will affect everybody no matter what situation they're in, but especially folks in the transportation group will really be able to benefit.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
John, how in the world did you ever get started in safety?
Well, for me, I was actually working in a hub environment, working at, as you said, at UPS, and I decided to start going to school. I am the first one in my family of 9 kids to go to college.
And were you the
I'm the baby.
Your birth order? The baby.
I'm the baby. So I'm going to college, working in a production environment, loading trailers and unloading trailers, and started going to school. And when I started going, I found that I really like school. I mean, I like learning. I found that out about myself. So it took me 10 years to get my bachelor degree in communications. After that, I started going again. I got my master's in training and development, and really thought my path was going to be in HR. That's what I thought I would be doing.
What attracted you to HR?
I think people. I felt like HR should be understanding people, should be working with people, and I felt like I was pretty good at that. I felt like I was pretty good at listening and solving problems and looking at issues. And after that, I was still in operations, but I was going to go to HR, but at the same time, I was working on my dissertation in leadership education. And so I was told, okay, you go to safety for 1 year. We want you to get to safety because safety is under the umbrella of HR, and then you'll go to HR. So I did that, and then after a year, I fell in love with safety. I was really engaged in it. I did my dissertation on safety teams in why some safety teams are better than others. Now, keep in mind the environment that I was in had approximately 200 safety teams, so I had a lot of data. And at the end of that time, I just fell in love with the safety. Had to go, when they went to move me, I had to go talk to the district manager.
So it wasn't just that you could say, hey, I want to go safety, and they said, yep, okay.
No.
Bigger deal than that.
No, I had to go talk to the main guy, the district manager, is a head of the entire operation in Louisville. And he said, John, why would you want to go into safety? I had plans for you in HR. I think it's going to hurt your career. And he said, I don't understand it. And so I told him, I said, Joel, I just found a niche that I feel like it gets me out of bed in the morning. I like working with people. And I said, if you think about it, my bachelor's is in communication, my master's is in training and development, and now I've got a doctorate in leadership. All those things work together when you're dealing with people and safety. So I feel like I could apply all those elements and be a very, very productive safety guy. And I've never regretted that decision. 33 years later, I've never regretted it.
Now, John, in just a moment, I'd like to come back and have you talk about when you say, what was it that made you fall in love with safety while you were doing it? But just as you're thinking about that, Jason, you run with and hang around a lot of safety people. And is that a very common expression for people to say, I love safety? I'm just curious. What do you find?
I think it's a great question, Merle. It's a very common expression for people that consider themselves safety and health professionals. I know I love safety. You see the stickers and the name badges and the so on and so forth. For those outside of the safety and health profession, I don't know if it's the most common expression or phrase. I love safety. I don't think so. At the same time, I think the paradox of that is it's the most important thing to every single one of us every single day and every single moment, because we can't move forward in life unless we feel physically safe. And there's a lot of talk about psychological safety in the profession. Well, you can't have psychological safety if you don't have physical safety first. If there was a cobra sitting in the 3 of the middle of us right now, we wouldn't be worried about a doggone thing except for someone getting and taking care of that cobra. We couldn't connect emotionally and physiologically because we'd be concerned about our physical safety.
True.
So tell us a little bit about this, John. So I'm curious, you referenced safety teams.
Yeah.
And you did a lot of study, a lot of research around safety teams. What do you mean by safety teams, to specify? And then what was the difference between maybe good performing versus some of the best performing safety teams? What did you see there?
Yeah, great point. Safety teams are teams that get together and they talk about root cause analysis. They talk about previous injuries that maybe have happened in the past month. They're going out and doing a job hazard analysis in the operation. So really just looking at prevention reports and trying to mitigate the injuries that are happening. What I found, and again, a very extensive survey, actually may not surprise any of your listeners, but what I found is the differences is the good teams, they respected that co-chair, that management co-chair, and non-management co-chair who ran those meetings. The good teams, the management co-chair would stay there for the entire meeting. The teams that didn't do so well, the management co-chair went in for those meetings to check a box to say I was here, and then left. And then what caused problems with that is there was a decision to be made. And now that manager co-chair who just checked out, no one can make a decision because he or she's not there. And so the teams became very frustrated. The good teams always recognized their people. They attended the meetings. They started the meetings on time, which was a big deal. And they recognized the group. The other side of it, that wasn't happening. So definitely a disparity in the teams.
Yeah, you said a few different things there. First is, the teams respected the leadership, I'll just say. They respected the leadership. And what I heard there is something our previous guest referenced was intention. So is your intention as a leader to, quote unquote, check the box because that's going to show up for your teams?
Right.
Or is your intention truly to make sure that this is the most effective safety committee team meeting that we could have today? That's the first piece. Second piece was presence. Are you just popping in there to, quote unquote, show your face?
Yeah.
Or are you being 100% where your feet are, as a previous guest referenced? And those were two of the determining factors, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I tell people all the time, Earl and I were talking, people are smart. They know is your heart into it? Are you there because you want to be there and you're trying to make a difference? Or are you there because your boss told you better get in that meeting so you can check that box? People are smart. They know that.
Some other elements that you can think that if we talk about that idea of the heart of the leader, and really leadership transcends not just titles, but it goes across everybody leads. But what are some other things characteristics that could be in our hearts that we need to watch for that would help us to lead folks in safety even better?
Yeah.
Obviously care. What other kind of things, traits?
Well, one of the top one for me is, and we've kind of talked about this, but is listening. I don't think that any of us, to my knowledge, there's not a lot of classes that are offered in listening. It's a skill that you have to learn, but you got to take time to listen to people. And when you listen to people, you learn a lot. Because as I say all the time, the employees are doing the job. And I'm going to be humble right away and say, you know that job better than me. You do it all the time, right? So I'm not too humble to say that. But I think when you take time to listen to people, it also makes them feel good. I say all the time that safety is also an employee relations it really is, because you're letting people know that you care about them. You let people know that you're listening to them. And I think we all want to feel valued and know that, hey, our boss not only cares about us, but he's going to listen to us.
So having a care and then letting that be manifest through the way we listen to people. I mean, what do you think that does to a person to connect that with them, deciding to embrace a safety lifestyle, a safety way of thinking? How does caring, listening, or maybe any other trait lead people toward that?
Yeah, I for me, Merle, it definitely builds relationships with people, and I like to think I'm a relationship type of guy. I don't manage a whole lot of safety through email, although I have to communicate through email. But I'm maybe a little bit old school. But I pick up the phone and call people a lot. I'm on the phone a whole lot because at that same time I'm building relationships. I had an employee, a manager yesterday, was kind of new to the company. I called him on the phone. I said, I've never talked to you before, and so we ended up talking for 30 minutes. I found out some things about him I did not know. And again, he's going to remember that conversation. And again, it's just for me making that connection, because when people know you care, then they're going to care too.
As you know, why we talk about some of the principles of Dale Carnegie and how to win friends and influence people, that book in this podcast. And what you've been describing really fits the model of what Carnegie was teaching in those principles. There's 30 principles, but there are 3 broad categories of those. First of all are the principles that help us to connect with people, to have a genuine connection with them where they can see who we are, we get to see who they are, we learn about each other. And then we build upon that to get the spirit of collaboration. We're a team. We make it where it's safe and good to work on a team through putting these principles into practice. And then ultimately, the principles show us how to lead and guide and direct other people. And we've often said that it's very difficult to lead and direct until you earn the right and you connect. I
agree.
If not, you're just barking orders. But once you make that connection, that's the real start.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that in your career, maybe even with a particular person?
Well, I can tell you, just recently we were talking about how we communicate with drivers, and we'll send messages out to them on their ELDs daily. It's an electronic logging device, but they can get messages on the tablet, and we send a quick messages out. But I've had drivers just this past week say, John, it's so nice to work for a company like Venture Logistics, to know they care about their drivers. And so we make connections every single day. And, for me, and I was telling you a story about when I was doing my dissertation, I had a 80-year-old nun named Sister McCorcoran. And, she was really a gem in my life, and she was always talking about the principles like you're talking about, caring for people, doing the right things. And one of the things that she said to me, she's passed away now, but one of the things she said to me, it's over 20 years ago, and I still remember it like yesterday. She said, John, just remember, congratulations on your dissertation. You've earned it. But remember, you have a right, you have a responsibility to go out and do good for mankind, is the way she worded it. So to this day, I take that very seriously. I'm trying to do the right thing, care about people, and as any safety professional does.
So, John, some of the things that you've said or that I've heard you say over the past few weeks, things like what gets rewarded gets repeated.
Yeah, Jason.
It's sticky, it's catchy, it's memorable language. Hard conversations are easier when you build relationships.
Well said on that. I totally agree with that.
Well, you said that. I'm just repeating back to you what you said, so it is well said.
I knew it was a smart guy. It had to be a smart guy that said that.
and that there's a lot of things that world-class companies do, and 2 of them for sure are they catch people working safely, and then they let them know because they understand what gets rewarded gets repeated. But then number 2, what I want to hear from in your perspective, is when they find unsafe situations, they correct them, and they correct them immediately.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a military phrase that standard unenforced becomes a new standard.
Mm-hmm.
And so we walk by
Great
something or someone, that's the new standard that we just set. How do you, because you're so relationship focused, how do you handle those hard conversations to make sure that the relationship stays intact, or ideally actually grows as a result of having some of those tough conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a safety professional, number one, you have to have that ability to have that hard conversation, especially with management. I know we talked a few weeks ago, and Merrill asked how does that go with management that are levels above me. And I think as a safety professional, you have to have that ability to talk to people above your head. You do it in the right way, and you do it professionally. But if you don't have that conversation and you're turning that head because that person might be a level above you or 2 levels above you, you're not going to be an effective safety person. You're just not. And so while that's very difficult at times, you got to be able to do that. Now, I will tell you, as far as employees, I think that the number one thing I think as a safety person, if you walk by something that's unsafe, man, somebody saw it. And you just set yourself up down the road where you turned your head. You can never turn your head to things like that. But how my approach is, I may go up to you and say, Jason, hey, you're doing a lot of good stuff here, but I'm not sure if you noticed, but you're doing a lot of, let's say, twisting. You're not stepping, you're not pivoting, you're just all twisting, and you're going to have back problems. You may not even been told that before. So I think it's the way you come across, but you always address it. You have to, but you don't. You address it in a positive way.
So address it in a positive way is what I'm hearing. And is it that you maybe lead with the positive first, find something, catch someone doing something well, and then maybe if you need to provide some coaching, follow up with that? What would that look like?
Absolutely.
How can people do that?
That's a great point. I do think you when you go up to somebody, you lead something with a positive, because in safety in our jobs, let's face it, there can be a lot of negative, right? I mean, there can be, so you have to work at it. But I think you always start off with a positive and close and commenting, because I know the employee's doing something good. There's no question about it. So you want to highlight that positive, but then you close with the what I always say, an opportunity to get better. Mm-hmm. And you close with that and say, listen, but here's what we can do better. We've noticed that we've had this certain types of injuries, or we've had these. Keep it in the trucking world, we've had these certain violations, and we want to get better, and here's why we don't want to have these violations. And then I like to tie it back into them personally and their health and say, don't want you to have this issue.
Got it. So making it about them at the end of the day.
Yes, absolutely. Make it personal.
Beautiful.
And I would even say there's a couple of principles there that you were putting into practice. Principle number 13 is begin in a friendly way. None of us like somebody coming up like, what in the world are you doing? Why are you doing that?
Right.
That's obviously, it would seem like that's obvious and common sense not to do. But there's something about starting in a genuine, friendly way. And then even in those leadership groups of principles, he says, begin with praise and honest appreciation.
I like that.
And see, that's the way to start.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I tell people all the time, you could be the most knowledgeable safety person in the world. You really can be. But if you don't have the ability to connect with people and to work with people and to do the things that we're talking about here, you're going to have a hard time. You just can't be that way. You got to be a people person. But as I said back early, if you don't have that ability to have that tough conversation and kind of lay it down, we're not putting up with this because we care about our people. We're going to keep them safe, and this has got to change.
It can be a tough conversation, John. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I just had a plant manager share with me a few weeks ago, and he said this. He said, it can be a tough conversation, but what's a tougher conversation is having to have a conversation with a friend or family member explaining why you didn't first have that tough conversation with the person that now is injured or experienced an incident. So it's kind of the cost benefit. Are you willing to have the courage in this moment to have this conversation that needs to happen? especially if it's around someone's safety, health, and well-being? Or are you going to unfortunately have to have an even more difficult conversation with one of their loved ones after the fact? And I think that can help us lean into that conversation. And at the same time, what I'm hearing is you can still build the relationship if you focus on the person that you're engaging with and why it's a benefit to them.
Jason, I love that point you just brought up, because I will tell you, although I've had some few hard conversations in my current role, I do think the manager respects me for that. I think, we don't, it's like we don't talk now or anything like that. They respect that. But for me, I read something the other day, and I really found it interesting. When you think of people who are really passionate, sometimes you think, well, they just love their job. But it was a book called Credibility, and I was reading it and it said, passion is actually driven out of things that have happened in the past of your learning experience and makes that passion stronger. And I found that, at least that hit home with me, because I've worked 5 fatalities over my career. I still remember them just like yesterday. And then the worst case for me is my actual niece was killed on Interstate 65 10 years ago. And I'll never forget, my sister called me and said, will you go identify her, at the morgue? And what do you say? Of course. And then when I was in there, the coroner said, Mr. Holland, we can't touch a body now before somebody identifies it, so prepare yourself. Well, I certainly wouldn't tell that story for 5 years. I couldn't even talk about it. But then I decided I'm going to make that a positive. I'm going to make that a positive and let people know that not only we care about you, but we don't want you to have to go through what I went through or what one of your family members might have to do if you're not safe at work. Whether or not you're driving a truck, whether or not you're on the road, whether or not you're in a warehouse, safety, it's there for a reason.
Now, Jason brought up a word that I'd like you to relate to, John, for a safety professional, is the word courage.
Yeah.
Now, I always love the statement. I'll say this and then you can go. I love what John Wayne said, the Duke. He said, courage is being scared to death, or as we would say in the country, scared to death. Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway.
Yeah.
So sometimes we think, oh, that guy's got courage. That doesn't mean there are not some fears inside. Talk to us about why courage is so important for us safety.
It takes courage, and what I mean by that, going in and having those difficult conversations, I can tell you it's stressful. It is. It's not like, boy, I can't wait to go talk to this guy 2 levels above me today. That's going to be fun. It's not like that. It's anxiety, it's stress, it's uncomfortable. With all that said, and I'm not saying I'm a super guy that's just brave and all the things you said and want to do that, but it is a conversation with all the things that I just said. I'm going to have it every time. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to blink an eye, because that's my responsibility, is my job. And again, I'm in this role, safety professional, because I care about people. I'm going to try to have those conversations as positively as I can, but I'm going to make sure that message is understood.
So it is not that anybody that's listened to us has said, if I could only be like other people, and didn't flinch. It's the fact that they see something and the cause is great. They decide the cause is greater than my fear and hesitation. Therefore, I will speak.
Well
to get
said.
the message across.
Well said. And I think that the reason people don't speak up, because they don't want to have that anxiety, they don't want to have that fear, and they don't want to go through it. And I'd say, hey, I'm that guy too, right? I don't enjoy it, but I'm going to, and I think every operation I am proud to say that I've been a part of for over 30 years has always done extremely well in safety. I mean, keeping people safe, and it's because of those, I think, conversations and all the things that that we're talking here. I will say it really helps, like the owners at Venture, when I hired on there with the Greg Eddy, Jim Rappin, Justin Weber, those guys. I mean, man, they support me. And my boss, Jim Rapp, he supports me 100%. Not just, maybe, but no, he supports me. Everybody knows he supports me. So when they know the guy at the top supports you, it just makes your job so much easier. It really does.
John, 30 plus years at UPS, currently now with Venture Logistics.
Yes.
And I think it's safe to say the most dangerous thing that any of us will do on a day-to-day basis, generally speaking, is get behind the wheel.
Absolutely.
Of a vehicle. And you have many people getting behind the wheel of a vehicle, and that is what they do. That's how they learn a living. That's how they put food on the table for their families. And we've talked a lot about trust and relationships and conversations and making it about people. As we dive into the more technical and tactical safety and health for Venture Logistics, tell us a little bit about how you're leveraging some new technology to make sure that we are creating as safe an environment as possible for some of your workers, for some of your team members at Venture.
Great point, Jason. Thanks for asking that. We have invested in a company called Samsara, but they're cameras in the vehicles, inward facing, outward facing. And I think the biggest myth I want your listeners to hear, because you hear this sometimes, is, the company's spying on me and they're watching me.
Well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Well, not like they think.
I'm just.
We're looking at the behaviors, yes, but I think some people think we sit, and I mean, truthful here, that people think we sit there all day and watch them every little thing they're doing, and they try. No, when there's alerts that are going to go off. So if a driver's on his cell phone, I'm going to get an alert on that. I'm going to see that, right? If a driver's speeding down the road, I'm going to get alert on that, and I'm going to see that. So if you're doing all the right things, we won't even be talking to you. But we're using this technology to reduce our speeding violations, to make sure that we're wearing our seat belts properly as we should be, to make sure that we're not on our cell phone. And as I tell the drivers, by the way, these are all not venture they are venture policies, but there's a higher cause here. These are DOT, our government regulations. So you can't go down and have a cell phone in your hand. You can have a Bluetooth, but you can't have a handheld phone in your hand. You can't speed down the road. I had a driver, just to your point, Jason, about the technology. He didn't have a seatbelt on. I called the driver. I said, "Hey, you gotta wear the seatbelt." And he goes, I'm in a hurry, and I just didn't put it on. And I'm in a hurry because and he was also speeding, by the way. And he said, I'm in a hurry, and I got to put food on the table, John. And we're just in a hurry. I said, okay. I listened. I was listening to him. So then I talked. And I said, and he said, I got to do this for my family and kids. I said, you know what? We're not really different. We're having this conversation too with me because of your family and your kids. Because if you don't wear that seatbelt and if you continue speeding down the road, then one day you're not going to go home to that family and kids to put food on the table. I think I made a connection with that guy after that. But we are definitely using the technology, and I can tell you it's making drivers safer on the road for 100%.
And that's the key point right there. My wife and I, Malia, we've got a 6-month-old at home, first baby boy.
Congratulations.
Name's Revel. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. I drove about 80,000 miles a year when I was in sales for a certain company, and about somewhere between, let's say, 30 and 50%, depending on the day, of people were distracted while driving.
I believe it.
And I think about that, and I think about not only their own safety, but now that, especially when I've got my 6-month-old son in the back, I am grateful that companies have, number one, created these technologies, and number two, companies like Venture have invested in them, right? Because I don't want someone, whether you're driving an 18-wheeler or whether you're driving a Mazda 3, whatever it happens to be, I want to make sure that your eyes are on the road for your own safety and everybody else's around you. Tell us again how you really help your drivers understand that it is about them, but it's about the thousands of other people that they're going to interact with, engage with on a daily basis.
We have a policy, and it goes through. So if you're on your seat, if you're not wearing a seatbelt, or if you're speeding, you're going to get a coaching form. And these coaching forums are one-on-one with the driver. And then not only that, and this is really powerful to me, and it's mandatory for us, that driver has to also come in off that road and watch his behavior or her behavior. So now,
Wow.
you know,
Well,
you have
what have you seen that do, John? I mean, have you sat there before where they're
Oh,
all
yeah.
of a sudden say, what kind of reaction you get?
often I hear, I didn't realize, or I'm embarrassed. Yeah. So I will say, you know, the drivers on the road, that's a tough job. And I want people to drive, our drivers to know, everybody at Venture, and I say this from top management, top owners down, we really do care about the drivers. Some people say those are words, and I get that. We really do care. So by caring, you have to be able to review those behaviors and let them know that we do not put up with it. Now, if it continues, it could also, someone could lose their employment, and they will lose their employment.
Well, and it's, you know, every elite team on the planet, let's just look at athletics here. After every game, they watch game film.
Right.
And they watch game film, and the coach says, wow, you did that really good. That's a plus on the scorecard for that play. Yeah, that play, not so much. That's a negative on the scorecard. Cameras, to me, are a coach. Cameras are a coach. And imagine a coach, imagine Nick Saban seeing his players either doing something well or not doing something well and not saying anything. Then what's the point? Why do you have a coach, a.k.a. why do you have cameras if you're not actually going to use the cameras to coach and make sure people understand we don't want to do that, let's do less of that, and then let's do more of this. That's what I'm hearing. The cameras are being used at Venture as a coach.
As a coach, and well said. And that, I couldn't say it any better than you just did, but it is absolutely a coach. And then we bring the drivers in on certain things, the behaviors, and we coach them, and we go through the videos, and we have them, so we have it on record that we did have that discussion.
Now, I have heard of some organizations that would take the film, and when someone would do something right, they would oftentimes still block their face off, not to do it, but just say, now let's just take a look at this. Look at how this person does it right. It can also be used as a tool to continue to reinforce right actions.
100%. So what we have done, we have, with the cameras, we have revamped all of our driver orientations. And we actually do that, Merle. We blur the face out. We show the good behaviors because, as we just discussed, there's always a lot of good. And I think you have to always remember that. In fact, a lot of times more good than bad, right? So we review those in the orientations. We blur out the faces. And then, again, that's another good coaching tool. The one thing I like is that the messages that I was telling you all, we send out daily, my managers and I, we all take a turn a month. But when we send out messages, we get something back from the DOT. When they get pulled, our drivers get pulled over, a lot of times, most of the time, we get clean inspections. Well, that's a badge of honor because you just got pulled over by the DOT. That officer walked around the truck, gave the driver a clean inspection, and then we get a report on that. Well, we were talking about starting out with something positive, Jason, and when we send out the messages, we'll say, just before we start out, we want to congratulate Merle and Jason yesterday. These two drivers had clean inspections. Congratulations, guys. Awesome job. And then we'll go into other things.
And that's the principle that goes along with praise the slightest improvement. Praise every improvement. Be hearty in your, here's a word nobody understands or knows, be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. Now, fellas, if I hadn't been doing this role, I wouldn't know what approbation was. You guys probably would. But what approbation really means is the stamp of approval. So be hearty with your stamp of approval. And that's what you're doing.
I like that. No, I didn't know that word. I'm probably going to write that down when I leave here.
Well, we get educated in these podcasts.
Well, and it circles back to what John said earlier. You know, I'll just use my words, but praise in public, criticize in private.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's
it.
what you're using, again, the video, the footage from the cameras, a perfect DOT inspection to praise the drivers in public.
Yeah, great point. I appreciate you pointing that out. You know, it's interesting, a lot of the principles that you're bringing out, and Jason, that you're bringing out, it's nice to hear, you know, we're definitely doing some good things.
And John, as we were chatting things up before we got started today, you know, we referenced this idea that facts tell, stories sell. And I think in safety, we often use data, facts, metrics to try to sell when all they really do is tell. And so tell us, in preparation, you referenced storytelling and how that can be really effective for influence and persuasion for the right reason, for ethical influence.
Absolutely.
How do you, at Venture, how do you use storytelling to make sure that we're selling the right thing and then not just inspiring hearts and minds, but actually moving feet so we create the right actions? What does that look like?
Oh, I think you're exactly right. I think storytelling is just so powerful. But I'll tell you, Jason, for me, what was interesting, I told you earlier I had worked 5 fatalities. And I almost feel guilty a little bit because on my end, when I'm working 5 fatalities, I'm working with the insurance, I'm working with the accident investigation people, I'm trying to get the training, get the facts. I never really thought, that somebody on that other end of those other 5 are doing what I'm doing today. I never thought that. I just didn't. I couldn't go there. But now I'm thinking, wow, I'm on the other side of this thing that I've had to go through 5 times. So I use that story when I'm having those conversations with people. Tell them, listen, you haven't seen it, and a lot of people haven't. I don't want you to have to see it, and we're not going to see it here. We're not going to do that. And so this is why we want you to wear your seatbelt. This is why we do not want you to speed. But I always try to tell stories, whether it's even a truck pulling out. And it's happened at other companies that I was at too, where a truck pulls out, the forklift still in the truck. That's happened, and you all know that. And so I tell those stories too. I've seen some of them not work out very well. And those experiences are obviously, sometimes there's no issues. They're near misses. We still have a call to try to figure out what happened so it don't happen again.
In the Carnegie world, we always use the phrase, Dale Carnegie used the phrase, the story teaches. And when you're telling the stories like that, it could be likened to saying, hey, let's everybody together in the basement, and we're going to turn on the TV, and we're going to watch a movie or watch a ball game. And as you're telling a story, it's like everybody in the audience is hearing it and you get the picture in their mind. But it's also a powerful way to help that data have reality. I have a good friend who calls himself a recovering accountant, that he used to live in the world of numbers, and he says, like, I had to get out of it. But he wrote a book that was so good called Taking the Numb Out of Numbers. And it's that idea that how could we weave a story to where we get the numbers across? The data is vital, got to have it, but make it real so people can grasp it even better. Because stories bring reality and they give application, and they do so much.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've been fortunate. I've had some very, very good mentors throughout my career. And I'll never forget, I had a district manager once told me that. He goes, John, your young career, I can tell you, numbers are important, but people will always remember stories. And to this day, I've never forgot that. And I do agree. It really makes people remember.
Yeah, there's a speaking of facts and statistics, most statistics are made up in my mind, right? And we're talking about facts telling and stories selling.
Right.
There's one, to your point, John, that says something like, after a presentation, 5% of people remember statistics and 60-some% of people remember stories.
Interesting.
Now, where did the study come from? I have no idea. Is it accurate? I have no idea. Facts tell, stories tell, but how do we couple the two together to make sure, again, that people are clearly understanding and remembering what they need to do in the world of venture to make sure that they're working safely and they go home safely? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And this is one of the challenges that, John, you and I were talking about earlier, you having been in logistics and me having been in logistics. When I first got into it, it was like, well, wait a minute. It's not like a factory where everybody is under one roof and I can go by and glance. And you got people here, there, and yonder, every which direction.
Right.
Very independent and all. So getting the message across that stays with, like your daily messages to people, so powerful for people to do. And I wonder that our listeners would always look for what are creative ways that, Jason, aren't just the cliches, the little signs everybody gets tired of seeing, we take it for granted, but the ways to say, how can we help people think and grab their attention?
Mm-hmm.
That's the challenge.
That's the challenge. And again, I think the more that you can connect, Merle, you're so right. I mean, we've got drivers, all different schedules, 24 hours, all around the clock. It is challenging. But the one thing that I'm actually encouraging now is that not just me sending out, but I put a message out last week that said, just remember, people in general want to hear from their boss, right? I feel special if my boss is telling me something. I'm going to remember, I think, even more. But so we've got actually the dispatcher managers now sending messages to the drivers as well. And I think that's a big key, something that we're honestly still trying to even improve. But the more we continue to send that those messages, and I tell people, messages I think sending safety messages is a little bit of an art too. You don't want to send a dissertation to a driver, right? You don't want to do it. It's a short, quick message. I tell people all the time, when I'm on the interstate and I'll see a sign that says, buckle up today. Well, I'm a safety professional and I certainly know to buckle up. I love that reminder. I love it. And those messages, the more that we create that awareness, you change the culture.
First of all, we value your time. You drove in here to the studio where it could be face-to-face. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you in just a second here to give just all our listeners a final word of encouragement, challenge, just a final thing to wrap up what you said. But you are a scholar. You are a person of practice. You have a genuineness about you. You've had experience. What would you like to leave our folks with? A thought.
Well, thanks, Merle. I think for me is just a reminder, folks, when we're out there, be humble, take time to listen to people, take time to get better. Just because even if you're a safety professional as well, I've been doing this for a long time and I learn something new every day. So I'm always trying to get better. I'm still a work in progress and trying to get better, but just pay attention to the road, get involved and show you care about people from the heart. And good things are going to happen.
Yeah. And so for all of you listeners today, once again, you've heard from somebody with a lot of practical experience and wisdom, and now it's our opportunity to say, what will I put into practice to make a difference in the lives of the people that I get to serve and lead and help?
And Merle, I would like to say, just before we close out, thank you to Jason, Charlie, the BCSP, and it's a privilege. I mean, it's a privilege for me to be here, and I'm very humbled and appreciative.
Thanks for listening to My Big Safety Challenge, a podcast produced in partnership by Dale Carnegie and BCSP, with your hosts, Dale Carnegie Master Trainer Merle Heckman, and Jason Coons, Global EHS Team and Culture Activation Lead for 3M. Executive produced by Charlie Eltringham. Supervising producer and editing by Michael Escobedo. Directed by Michael Escobedo, Joel Burgai, and Giachi Liu. Graphics by Giachi Liu. Editorial support from Brendan Mohawk. Consulting producers are Colin Brown and Mark Sullivan. To have new episodes delivered directly to you, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. If you would like to share your story of a safety leadership challenge you faced, email us at info@mybigsafetychallenge.com. See you next time.